Hi, this is Kristin with Airport Improvement Magazine, and I am here today with Luke Reed from Heico Fastening Systems. How are you, Luke?
I'm doing good, Kristin. How are you this morning?
Good. Nice to see you. How's North Carolina?
North Carolina is hanging in there.
Okay, so let's talk about what Heico does. Tell me in a nutshell, what does your company do?
Well, our company is multifaceted. We've been around since 1900. We're based and we're formed in Germany. And we fundamentally we're a cold forming part manufacturer. And we started back in 1900 producing cold formed parts for the furniture industry, believe it or not, decorative nails and furniture tacks, that type of thing. All the things and all the metal components in a piece of furniture that you wouldn't see on the outside. So that, the company did that for a number of decades and started to, increase their capabilities, started looking at other categories of business. And 30 or so years ago, they started cold forming products for the automotive industry, which comprises of quite a bit of our business today globally. Not as much in the United States, but so they went there, and that was wildly successful. And so they, it's a pretty dynamic outfit, Heico Group in Germany. So the guys they decided they want to get into the industrial bolting category. And that's the division that we're focused on today. So Heico Group is made up of three areas of focus. Furniture is still important today. Then you have the automotive, OEM and sub-tier category, and then you have the industrial bolting, Heico Fastening Systems.
You said it's cold forming. What does that mean, Luke?
Well, it means there's varied methods of manufacturing a part or a widget, and you can use different forms of pressure and stress and heat. And cold forming is generally where you're not using heat as a component. So the steel material comes in, and they don't do much to it, but it comes in and it goes through a series of dies in a press or a series of presses. And is formed into a part. It could be a knurled knob, with a screw connection on the end, or it could be a washer, or any number of generally smaller parts is what we focus on.
So basically, Heico majors in the minors, right? You've got these tiny little washers and screws that you work with, but they're incredibly important. And in aviation, that relates to FOD or foreign object or debris on the runway.
Well, you're right. And FOD is, you look at all the different components that go into an airfield, and maintaining its performance and safety, all critical components. And a washer seems pretty insignificant in comparison to some of the larger assemblies and applications in an airfield. So yes, the washer it's there to prevent bolt loosening. So a specific application would be the in-ground can lighting that you see on an airfield. That could happen are the bolts that secure this assembly together come loose. So a worst case scenario is a bolt or a washer, or a combination of the two is left or works itself loose on an airfield, and is either sticking out of the assembly, fractionally. You certainly don't want a large aircraft tire to land on a protruding bolt head, and also that's going back to the FOD. It's a worst case scenario is a jet turbine sucking up a component, a washer or a bolt or any other sort of foreign object debris into its intake, which could be disastrous.
It's hard to imagine that something so small could be so impactful.
Well, yes, for our application, specifically in the airfield in-ground lighting. It is. What number of years ago, the wedge lock washer as a category of fastener was prescribed with a lot of help from the FAA. They recognized the mechanical advantages of the part, and it just fits in perfectly with these can lighting applications. What it does, Kristin, is it, as an aircraft lands in close vicinity or on top of a can light, there's a tremendous amount of, as you can imagine, shock loads that impact the ground at that point. So they really needed a system that could keep the bolt secure under any conditions, and prevent the potential for FOD or bolt loosening or the light malfunctioning because of loose bolted connections.
The way you operate your business, when an airfield is looking for new lighting, are you part of the RFP process? Like, how does your business work in terms of the flow throughout the?
Well, it's extremely dynamic and multivaried. The ideal situation for us is if, let's just say, there's going to be a new airfield built or a refurbishment effort, and the contractor or the engineering firm that has been commissioned to help drive the project would reach out to us, or we would reach out to them, identify ourselves, explain the product, and kind of go from there. These projects are incredibly broad, large, and diverse, and Heico plays a small but we don't think insignificant role in the process. So we're just available to answer questions. Each airfield has a different set of environmental circumstances, and the northern airports, of course, they deal with ice and snow events and the subsequent snow removal efforts, which can impact the can lighting. And then, of course, where you are in the Texas area, up until recently, there's not been a huge amount of that. But yeah, so what impacts that bolted joint that secures the can lighting? So we're open to being available to answer questions and have discussions, and more importantly, to offer testing. We do a lot of specific testing for specific applications. We do that through our labs in Germany, and we also help with third-party testing done locally. So if a contractor is curious about how tightly should I torque a bolted connection down under these set of variables or circumstances, and we can come back to them and give them some peace of mind, reinforce what they may already know, or give them some information that they weren't necessarily considering.
It sounds very precise. I'm curious to know what kind of testing these washers go through.
Well, there's the primary test. There's a test stand called the Junker or the Junker test, and this is a test that's more or less recognized globally. It uses it basically determines the tightening or the maintenance of preload or clamp load of the bolted joint over some very extreme vibrations, transverse vibrations. So you don't need to use our washers. You can test any number of bolted joints and any number of locking mechanisms to see if they perform. And what happens is when they start the test over a given period of time, 10 seconds, they test the preload or the clamp load before the test starts, and they test it afterwards. And if there's any element of self-loosening, then it's identified, graphically or with data points within the test. So it's very clear and it's very understandable. So that's the primary one. So if another test that would be very important potentially for airfields is the salt spray test or the corrosion resistance type of test. And those are key. If a washer or a bolt were to corrode or under salt or de-icing conditions, over time, that bolt can wear away and could experience self-loosening because of material failure. So we all want to prevent that. And so those are the two key tests We have a few military standard tests, aviation-oriented tests that we've gone through that have varying levels of extreme impacts or vibrations that are a lot of fun. But for airports, it's generally the vibration test, the Junker test, which is the 25201-4, and then the salt spray test.
How would an airport know if maybe they should consider a different set of washers and bolts?
Well, it's most airports, especially those that receive government funding, they kind of follow the guidelines, the EVA 83. It's just a set of guidelines for a specific can lighting application that calls out wedge lock washers. So it's pretty clear. They say in there they can't use other type of locking mechanisms, split lock washer, for example, just because of the performance. It is pretty subpar for the requirement.
What is new in the world of washers? Is there anything, what kind of research is being done with new materials or anything that people might not know about?
Well, we've got some great things going on. Our German design engineering staff is extremely robust and highly progressive or future thinking in terms of our product line. So we've got some really cool things coming down the pipeline that I can't talk about at this point, but we're real excited about. But here just recently we came out with a new product. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so this is great. This is a 3/8 inch stainless steel wedge lock washer. This is the Heico lock wedge lock washer, and this is the one that is key for us for a specific application of can lighting or airfield in-ground lighting. You spoke about FOD earlier, which is pretty key. Now I'm gonna bring up a larger washer just so you can see. But they come in, they have a little bit of glue that holds the two washer halves together. And the washer and the glue is just there for the convenience of the initial installation. So once the bolted joint is tightened to standard, that glue dissipates. So it in effect it just disappears under the actual stress or pressure, contact pressures. I'm trying to rip these things apart here. There we go. So in effect, when you loosen the bolted joint, you go from one washer pair to two separate halves. Well, that brings up an obvious question. What happens at 3 a.m. in the morning? It's 10 degrees outside in Newark, and the maintenance crew or staff is on a very tight timeline, and for whatever reason, a single washer half drops on the ground. So that's a classic FOD potential right there, and that's something that we are concerned about, that we continually stress to our customers and end users. Just be sure you secure the two separate halves. So what we've done is we've developed a system where there's no glue. We called it the combi washer. I don't know if you can see it here. Mm-hmm. I've got a larger one here that you can see. If you notice, there's a blue polyamide ring on the inside of the washer. And if you can see, there are 3 locking tabs, plastic tabs. So this inner locking tab serves 2 functions. Firstly, it keeps the 2 washer halves together, so it does away with the glue. Secondly, and in terms of the importance here, is the 3 locking tabs on the inside actually lock into a bolt semi-permanently almost. I mean, you can take it on and off, but the tabs will keep the washer secured to the threads of the bolt. So I call it like a semi-permanent type of assembly. And what this does is this completely takes away the potential for a washer half to be left on the airfield. So we called it the combi washer, and we're very excited about it. A great part of the development of this part of our wedge lock washer family is for airfield lighting. We have the combi washer in the 3/8 inch stainless here, and in Europe and most parts of the world they use an M10 combi washer for the same applications. So that's one that we're extremely excited about. It falls in line with the guidance given out by the FAA, and it's just a value-added component to the standard wedge lock washer.
It's so interesting. Who would think that something so small could be so impactful?
Well, it certainly is, and it's the potential for the wedge lock washer as a category is generally for critical bolted joints. So on any assembly, whether it's a snowblower, a wind turbine, or a can light, there are bolts that the engineers identify as being critical. If that bolt fails or comes loose, it could be really detrimental in terms of loss of time, money. It could potentially be provide a risk for personnel, or even being even fatal. So what we do is we help identify the critical bolted joints. If an application has 100 bolts on it, not all 100 are going to be necessarily critical, but there may be 20 of the 100 bolts that are critical, and that's where our washer would come into play.
Well, thank you for the explanation, Luke. I really appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by Show and Tell today.
Well, Kristin, you're very welcome. It's always a pleasure to help you and to support airport improvement. So anything we can do, let us know, and we are always available to discuss these types of things in finer detail with the airport category or industry as a whole.
Sounds great. See you soon.
All right. Take care.